I want to welcome you to another session of the Lighthouse project on the Zoom platform as we continue our learning on a weekly basis. Now that the holiday season is behind us, Baruch Hashem, we could start to explore on different subject matter. There's always different things that we could go and go back and revisit, whether it's Emunah, whether it's Mashiach classes, Tefillah classes. But right now, since we have almost like a 4 to 6 month stretch between, 4 to 6 week stretch before we really have to talk about Chanukah, I wanted to go back to a series that actually happens to be a lot of fun. It's called the Did You Know series. And what's nice about this series is that it talks about a lot of different things that typically we don't talk about. Many people are very curious about, and they're very much in Torah sources. We find it in Torah, we find it in Midrash, we find it in Agadah. We did classes about a lot of different subject matters, and I thought that it would be fun to visit it again and to see if we could learn some Torah on a different tip, something a little bit more light, a little bit more sci-fi. My family always makes fun of me when we start talking about these types of classes. They're like, oh, there's a sci-fi Torah. But you know what? It's there, it's real, and it's really good. So this week's class is going to be part of the Did You Know series, and we're going to focus in on giants. So before we get started, I'd like to first give some dedications and some honorable mentions. First, this class should be dedicated to Ilun Nishmat of David ben Zohara, Shmuel ben Amuma, Yaniv ben Irina, Zion ben Zecharia, Rav Ezer Labaton, Avraham and Freddie ben Moshe, Daniel ben Juna, Miriam bat Simi, Rafael ben Pirchia Fivi, Menachem Mendel ben Hanan, and Devorah Fega bat Shmuel. Also, that this should be to the general Hatzlacha, Yitbarach Shemo Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the following people merit to have health, wealth, success, Bracha v'Hatzlacha, Siyata Deshma, and all that they do. Stacy Esther bat Miriam and her boys, Guy ben Dina and family, Michael Citron and family, Henry Gordetsky and family, Avraham and Yosef Sakal, Shalom and Eliyahu b'nei Esther, Jonathan Moshe and Julie Yerimi, Rafael ben Galit, Avraham ben Violeta, and Ariel ben Yael. Also, for that, for a zivug for Inbaba Jacqueline, Batchem Jacqueline, and for the teshuvah of Moshe Yitzchak ben Chaya Golda. Okay, let's get started. So, this particular series is very unique because it takes on unique subject matters that are able to be sourced and connected to the Holy Torah. Actually, everything is, but it's always so fascinating when you learn it out from Pesukim, Midrashim, and Jewish history. Now, since we just started Bereshit, the beginning, also the beginning of life, we come across some very interesting storylines and characters. And as a matter of fact, right off the bat in Sefer Bereshit, in Parashat Bereshit and Parashat Noach, in other words, exactly the two subjects, the two parashiot that we've just learned in the past 2 weeks, there is mention of giants. They're called the Anakim. The most famous ones are Og and Sichon. Og Melech HaEmori, Og Melech HaBashan, and Sichon Melech HaEmori. Those are, later on in the class, we'll go a little bit more in details on those two giants. But in this week's parasha and last week's parasha, there's a mention of giants. And again, my family always makes fun of me because I love this stuff. I love this. They call it sci-fi Torah, but when you see it, this type of lesson is sometimes better than a Hollywood movie. There are things inside that you won't believe existed and are part of our of our Torah. You will be able to answer some questions that maybe you were always curious about, like, did giants ever exist? And if they do, or if they did, where do they come from? Who are their parents? How big were they? I mean, we always try to imagine giants, but how big were they? Is there any sort of a record of how big these giants were? What did they eat? I mean, the closest thing that we have is maybe some things that we see in movies or maybe in cartoons. Not only that, in our Torah, it's sourced in Parashat Bereshit. We have it in Parashat Noach. We have interactions with giants, both with Noach, Avraham Avinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu. And I'm not talking about giants like David and Goliath, even though he was pretty big and pretty massive. And I'm not talking about Shimshon HaGibor. He was also pretty big and pretty massive. I'm talking about proper giants, like the ones you hear about in fairy tales. And as a matter of fact, where are they today? Are there any giants in the world today? So in order to answer these questions, we need to go to the beginning. And in reality, we always have to go to the beginning, because if we're going to get any sort of a thorough understanding of anything, it's always good to go all the way to Bereshit, see where it started from, and take it from there. So in the beginning, the Midrash says that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to create man, he asked the angels around him, or he conferred with the angels around him, and said, we know, let us make man in our likeness, in our image. And the original plan was to make man Rosh al Kol Malachei Mala, to be the head, to be in charge of all the angels that are in the heavens. That he should be in charge of them and on top of them. And they will be underneath his rule, or underneath his command. Now, as soon as the angels, because we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world on the first day, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. If you ever want to understand what happened in the first moments of creation, it's very simple. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the heavens, and then he created the earth. And by saying created the heavens, I mean, we've just really compacted into one word, et hashamayim, a lot. Because when he created the shamayim, that's all the legions of angels and all the different levels of heavens all in one. When it says the shamayim is corresponding to that. So imagine how many angels, and these are not like regular angels, these are angels that can create worlds, can destroy worlds, and they were going to take a human being from this world to be in charge of all that stock of angels in the shamayim. And they came to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and they said, Ma enosh ki tizkerenu, halo hu atid lachtor lefanecha, velama ata mashpil otanu tachtav. It says, why are you bringing this human being amongst angels? Don't you know that he's destined to sin in the future? Why are you insulting us and putting us, or degrading us, and putting us under his command? That was the first ta'ana, the first claim that the angels had against man. So the Kadosh Baruch Hu answers them. He says, if you were on earth just like man, you would sin just like him. Miyad, in that exact same moment, they looked down on earth, and at that same moment when they were having that conversation, they saw the women, the females of the world, the human female that Hashem created, that they were good, they looked appealing to them, to their eyes, and they desired him. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu took these angels and threw them down to the earth. Fallen angels. And these fallen angels are called Bnei HaElokim. And they actually have a name. We don't find them in the Torah, because this type of information you rarely find in basic commentary like Rashi. But if you open up the Midrashim, almost all of them reveal to us what happened in that moment, who were the angels, what's their names, and even the dialogue that happened during this time. So, anyways, as these fallen angels come into planet Earth, they are the title that they get in the Chumash is Bnei Elohim, the sons of God, or in other words, angels. Just another way of saying angels, and their name is Aza and El. In other words, that's their name. There's a different place where it's brought. There's a different name. Later on, we will learn out the different name. But basically, it was two angels. And these two angels happen to be, by the way, if we want to tie it in to some of our other learnings that we have, these are neshamot that the Erev Rav, remember this year we spoke a lot about the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude, that the originally we see it during the time of Yetziat Mitzrayim with Moshe Rabbeinu, and later on we see through the generations how they've constantly been a menace to the Jews, and how even recently now we were able to this year see the Erev Rav in Israel, the Erev Rav all over the world, and we know that they're part of the final story of the Geulah, having to deal with this mixed multitude of people that are within the Jewish nation. And the souls of the Erev Rav come from these two fallen angels. Matter of fact, these fallen angels have several names. They are also, if you ever go through the Chumash, you'll see that they have different names, but they refer to them, but that actually happen to be the exact same two angels or two fallen angels or their descendants, their offspring. So the other name that they're giving them is Nephilim, and these the Erev Rav come from these two angels, these two fallen angels that are also named Nephilim. And why are they called Nephilim? Nephilim comes from the word to fall, which is ironic. Pay attention how the word Nephil, fall, almost the Hebrew and the English is exactly the same on that word. So if you want to learn a good Hebrew word, Nephilim are the fallen ones. And that's why that's the title that we're given to these fallen angels. And why are they called the fallen ones? Why are they called Nephilim? Because they lowered themselves from their holiness. And how did they do that? By they chased after the woman, the human beings, the human females, and mishum zeh, they lowered their levels from a holy level to a lower level, and by doing that, the Kadosh Baruch Hu took any souls that were connected to Erev Rav, any souls that were connected to these two fallen angels from Olam Haba, and he took them and he put them all here in Olam Hazeh, and he's giving them all the sachar, any sort of reward that any of these neshamot should get while they're here on this planet, they're going to get over here, because Erev Rav have no chelek in Olam Haba. But their source comes from these two angels. I thought it was very interesting to mention it, since we learned earlier this year a bunch of lessons about the Erev Rav. By the way, we know that the Erev Rav, the Midrash, if you recall, we said is Nega Ra, that they are an evil influence. And we know that Nega Ra also is an acronym for their what constitutes, what makes up the Erev Rav. So for the Erev Rav, if you take Nega Ra, the Nun, the Gimel, the Ayin, the Resh, the Ayin, that stands for Nun is Nephilim, the fallen angels. Giborim, those are the mighty ones, which are the offspring of the Nephilim. Anakim, that's the giant. The Resh is Rephaim, that's also the offsprings of the giants. And then the Ain is the Amalekim, that we see that even the Amalekites come from the progeny of these two fallen angels. And if we start to search for these giants in our Torah, if you go to the 6th chapter in Genesis and you read the Pesukim Aleph through Hey, or the first pasuk to the 5th pasuk, you'll see that it starts to mention them. And we'll start. And it came to pass when man commenced to multiply upon the face of the earth, uvanot yuladu lahem, and daughters were born to them. And the sons of nobles, or the sons of God, or the fallen angels that we're talking about, saw the daughters of man that they were beautifying themselves. And beautifying themselves, meaning that they started to use makeup. the beginning of time was makeup and revealing skin was introduced through the daughters of Cain. And when they saw that the woman has started to go without sniut, starting to reveal flesh and to beautify themselves by coloring their hair and using makeup, that enticed these angels. And it says, that they saw that the daughters of men were beautifying themselves. And they took for themselves wives from whoever they chose. In other words, they fell down to this earth. They chose a human female in order to marry them or to procreate with them. I'm going to skip that next pasuk. It says, this is right after the flood. It says that I'm not going to let my spirit not quarrel forever concerning man, because he is also flesh, and his days shall be 120. That's where we see the source of it. We say Ad Ma Ve'esim. We say let him be until 120 years old. Where do we get that? Bereshit, Perek Vav, on Pasuk Gimel. It says Vayiyu Amav Ma Ve'esim Shana. We see that Hashem says that 120 years is a good age for a person to have. And the last pasuk is exactly connected to our lesson today. It says, "Hanefilim hayu ba'aretz ba'yamim ha'em," and the Nephilim, the fallen angels were on the earth on those days. V'gam achrechem, and then afterwards, asher yavo bnei Elohim el bnot ha'adam, when the sons of nobles or otherwise, aka the fallen angels, would come to the daughters of man, hema giborim Hashem ha'olam anshe Hashem, and they would bear them. In other words, they were able to have children with the humans, and they are the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. In other words, the offspring of a human and this fallen angel created a type of new entity, a new creation. Not a new creation, but a combination of a creation, and they called them here Giborim. Giborim meaning the strong ones, the mighty ones. So interesting. That's the first time that we see a mention of this in the Torah. Midrash Rabbah says that the Nephilim, these fallen angels that we speak of, have 7 different names. They're called Eimim, Refaim, Giborim, Zamzumim, Anakim, Avim, Nephilim. Now, the reason why they have all these different names, because he gives. I'll read just a few, just so we can get a sampling of their character. Eimim. What's Eimim? Eimim comes from the word Eima. Eima means fear in Hebrew. Eimim. Anyone who used to look at them, fear would grab a hold of them. Okay, so that's a good name. Eimim, like the fearful ones. Refaim. What's Refaim? Refaim is when something becomes rafui, when something becomes loose or becomes weak. So the reason their name would be Refaim, anybody who would look at them, his heart would melt like wax. Giborim, they were mighty ones. Obviously, they were physically strong. Anakim, meaning that their stature, they were huge. And also the reason they said Anakim, the word Anakim in basic modern Hebrew means giants. But the reason why they said Anakim, it says, they said that they were so big that they would block the vision of the sun. It seems like they could even hug the entire sun, and they would worship these giants, and they would even pray to them that you're so high up in the heavens, please, bring down the rain for our crops. And the last one, Nephilim, and Midrash Rabbah gives an ulterior definition to why the Nephilim, the fallen angels, are called Nephilim. Shepilu ta'olam, v'shenaflu min ha'olam, v'shemil'u ta'olam Nephilim b'znut shelaim. Shepilu ta'olam, what happened? They lowered the standards of the world, meaning that their addition to our world wasn't a positive one. They degraded the world that they came into. V'shenaflu min ha'olam, and they also fell from the olam. Which olam? The upper worlds. They fell from the upper worlds into the lower worlds. And they filled the world with additional nephilim, just like them, but in their improper relations with human women. Rabbi Chia says that these Nephilim herichu yamim, they used to have a very long life, and the reason they called Nephilim is because they fell out of the heavens. But when they started to procreate with the human beings, with the human females, their children were called Anakim. So in other words, the original two are called Nephilim. The children are called Anakim, giants. And furthermore, the reason why they were called Rephaim, meaning the continuation of that, notice that there's a almost like their name is defining them. Nephilim, fallen angels. Anakim, their offsprings, what are giants. And then the last name that we find them, and it says they were called Rephaim. What's Rephaim? Again, when something becomes loose, something becomes lax. And the reason why they called them Rephaim, like lax beings, because because ever since they came into this world, they started to partake in worldly matters, and they started to disassociate themselves with the upper worlds, with the heavens. They weren't any more interested in the upper worlds, as Nikeu Rephaim, because they disconnected from the heavens and were more connected to this world. They received the word Rephaim. So even here, according to the names that you see that they're mentioned in the Torah, you could actually decipher what stage these giants are in existence. If it's they just landed, just got here, if it's their offspring, or if they're already really embedded in the world and the way they're partaking it. And later on, we'll see why these names are so important. Now, we know the names of the angels. The name is Uzzah and Azza and El. So you should know. Does it sound a little familiar? I'm going to say it one time just for the lesson, but it's not good to say their names. But does it sound familiar? Uzzah and Azael. Doesn't it sound a little bit familiar, like the sacrifice that we give on Yom Kippur called the Azazel? So you should know that there's a midrash that says that two angels came down. One of them is the name that I just mentioned, and another one is actually it's just not good to say their names, so I'll just split it up. His name is Sameach and Zai. So there's Azza and El, and Sameach and Zai. Okay, those two angels came down. Sameach and Zai, or Shmach Zai, depending on how you want to read it. He did teshuvah. He came down. He saw everything was wrong. He did teshuvah. He went back to the heavens. The other one, the one that we're saying over here, that sounds like the Azazel offering from Yom Kippur, he's still here on this planet. And as a matter of fact, he's in Jerusalem, and he's buried inside a mountain. And as a matter of fact, during the times of Bet HaMikdash, we know that the Kohen HaGadol would take the goat all the way to a cliff, and the cliff that they threw the Azazel goat off of, where the Samech Mem would go and try to pick up the thousands of pieces of that animal that just got torn into pieces from the shards or from the rocks that it just hit. Underneath that mountain is where this particular angel is locked up and chained. Later on, we can see, I'm not going to mention it in this class, but if you want to learn more about it, there's Balak, Bilam have visited with them. Shlomo HaMelech has also visited with them. And there's a lot of stories in the Gemara about them. But just so you can see that these two angels, one did teshuvah, went up, one stayed over here. And you can see that sometimes that even that their names that we say all the time, oh, the Azazel goat, the Azazel goat. The reason why we say it's the Azazel goat is because the goat goes to where Azazel is. Furthermore, there's a question. This is where you try to make sense of things. If these are fallen angels and we are human beings, how are they able to survive in this world? How does it exactly work? I mean, angels are supposed to be made of fire. We are made of flesh. In other words, I'm pretty sure that when fire meets flesh, it should burn. It's just not a good match. How is it possible that these Nephilim were able to procreate with human beings? So Rabbi Yosef in the Gemara says, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, he asked the question. If he asked the question, how are they able to survive in this world? He says, that these are the ones. It says that this is the ones that are mentioned in the Torah. And we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the fish and the fish and the birds on Wednesday. I'm sorry, on Thursday. But he's saying over here, is revealing to us that when it says over there, Ofi Ofef, he was talking about these types of angels. And what did we learn about angels? The rabbi is revealing to us. We know that angels have a few things that are similar to human beings, and a few things that are that are exclusive to angels. I believe in this exact same series, Did You Know series, there's a class called Aliens. When we have, interestingly enough, we're doing Giants. A few years back, we did a class about aliens, and over there we detailed exactly what are the character traits of an angel versus a human being, where we're similar and where we're different. Over here, just in short, he's revealing to us that angels have the ability to look like human beings. They appear to human beings in the form of human beings. And it says, and then he continues to say, so how is it possible that you're able to morph themselves from a shape of an angel to a shape of a human being? So he continues to tell us, they have the ability to morph, to shapeshift to many different shapes. And when they come down to this world, they have the ability to transform themselves, to shapeshift, and look as if they are in the shape of a human being. Wow, that's very interesting, because now when you're walking in the street, how do you know if it's not a shape-shifting angel? Or maybe not. All right, let's continue. Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer says on this on these angels. These angels that fell from their holy places in the Shamayim, who did they see? They saw Bnot Cain. They saw the daughter of Cain, Malchot Gluyot Basar Erva, that they used to walk around showing skin, showing the things that should be covered and should be in tzniut. Umekachrot Einehem Kezonot, and they would put a lot of makeup on their eyes like harlots. V'ta'u acharehen, and they coveted them, and they went after him, and they v'lakchu mehen nashim, they took from these Bnot Cain. Rabbi Yosha ben Kocha says that the Malachim are Esh Lohatim, exactly what we just said, as the chapter in Tehillim, the 104th chapter in Tehillim says, Misharitav Esh Lohet, that the angels are made of fire. How can an angel made from fire procreate with something that's made from flesh and blood? And how is it? And it's not even burning the body. So it says the answer to that, when they fell down from the heavens, they lost that. They lost that fire. They lost that that quality that belongs to angels. And Kedushatan, Kochan, V'komatan Ke'adan. It happens to be that now they became much lower in their holiness, and their power and their stature is equivalent to human beings. There is no difference between the way the human beings are and their flesh and blood as a morphed angel, and that's how they were able to procreate. And that's how they were able to have relations, even though they were made up completely two different entities in the beginning of time. Rabbi Tzadok says that the Anakim, which are the offspring of the human females and the fallen angels from the Shemaim that are now in the form of a man. Rabbi Tzadok says that these Anakim that became now the offspring happened to be that when she gave birth to them, they became giants. Meaning, even though the angel looked like a man and she was a human, but their offspring produced giants. That not only were they very tall in stature, but they were thieves, they were crooks, and they were murderers. As it said in the Sefer Bamidbar. Now, interestingly enough, because their offspring was quote unquote half human, half fallen angel, Amar Yehuda, the Gemara brings this, says, Mishum sha'anakim ba'u mitzad zeh u'mitzad zeh, since the Anakim, again, Rephaim are the fallen angels, their offspring is Anakim. So now we're talking about the offspring. Mishum sha'anakim ba'u mitzad zeh u'mitzad zeh, since the Anakim come from half fallen angel, half human being, behind tzad melachim, tzad bnot adam, they became that the Rephaim saw that their offspring were Anakim, that the Rephaim started to completely forsake heaven and have no interest in actually going back to the heaven or going back to their old status as angels, and these this offspring of Anakim, Hayu Marichim Yamin, they would live for a very long time. But what happened is, when they would live for a very, very long time, eventually half of their body would give out. Half of their body would weaken. And half of their body would actually die. Which one is it? The human side of their body eventually expired. The human part of that union of half fallen angel and half human being, the human part of it would eventually die, but the other half would continue living because the angels don't expire. As because half of them was compromised of angels that don't die, and half of them from human beings that do die, what they would do is at the end of days, when their bodies would give out on them, they would commit suicide. They would take these special herbs that are deadly, and they would eat it and die. And that way, they were able to completely finish the story, because they couldn't just be, a fallen, I guess, angel inside a dead body, because the body would expire on them. So when they finish the job completely and commit suicide with samamavet. What's samamavet? What is this drug of death? We don't know, but they said it's a special esev, a special grass that is found in the field. And because they wanted to kill himself at the end of days, they were once again now getting the new title of Rephaim. What's Rephaim? It says that another way that they would that they would kill themselves is that they would go to the middle of the ocean and they would drown themselves. And they would call it Rephaim. They would loosen themselves from the grip of life and they would die. So we see that maybe a good place to find maybe bones or giants artifacts is not in forests and not in on land, but maybe in the sea, because that was the place where they would go to commit suicide. And their wives, as a matter of fact, the Midrash speaks about it also. They were hayum ibnot adam apchutot. They said they were the lowest level females that were around. And since once they became impregnated by these giants, the womb, the baby in their belly became so big and so huge that they couldn't carry it a full term of 9 months, and it would fall from their belly. Nafal ma'arechem. And that's why they get the word Nephilim. Again, what's the word Nephilim? When something falls. So the reason why they got the name Nephilim is because the actual womb would drop from their belly because they couldn't hold it because of the size of the giant of the size of the offspring of that baby. So that's another reason why they called it Nephilim. So it's good. We got a bunch of explanations about their different names, about their nature, where they came from, their source, who they were. But now, let's go a little bit further. These giants roamed the earth for hundreds and hundreds of years. As a matter of fact, they were on this planet for, if you say that they were the daughters of Cain, Cain was the first man, was the first Adam's son. So we know it's from the beginning of time. So they were able to be here for, I would say, hundreds, if not maybe about 15 or 1600 years on this planet until the generation of the flood. And we know that the generation of the flood is the flood of Noah, this week's parasha, that all of existence, all is getting wiped out. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave instructions to Noah to pack up his family, which is Noah, his wife, Shem, Ham, V'Yafet, and their wives, which is a total of 8 people, and 2 of each animal, and 7 of each animal that is kosher, and they packed them all up to a boat, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought a mabul of 40 days and 40 nights of an intense rain, also 150 days of the of the water channels from underneath the earth bubbling up hot water, and the whole scenario, the whole situation lasted roughly close to a year, maybe about 10 or 12 days shy of a year from the minute it started raining till Noah came out of the ark. And that's the time where all the giants were killed off. As a matter of fact, all of existence was killed off. HaKadosh Baruch Hu pressed the reset button, and he's starting over with just a few animals and Noah and his family. Now, if that's the fact, if everyone has been wiped out off the planet except for Noah and his family, then how is it possible that in next week's parasha in Lech Lecha we're going to see a giant, Og, which in this week's parasha is known as Og. In next week's parasha he's known as Og, comes and visits with Avraham Avinu. If everything got wiped out of the planet, how did this giant make it? And as a matter of fact, I'll just give you a sneak peek. If we go to the end of the Chumash, when Moshe Rabbeinu, right before entering Eretz Yisrael, before all of the 12 tribes go to inherit the land of Israel, he had a couple of battles. And the 2 battles that Moshe Rabbeinu won before his death was 2 battles versus 2 giants. One is called Og Melech HaBashan. Over here is already a king Og. And next week's parasha is just going to be regular Og. In the Sefer Devarim, he's going to be Og Melech HaBashan. He's already became a king. And Sichon Melech HaEmori, another giant called Sichon and Melech HaEmori. So how could it be? Here are 2 giants when there should be no more giants left in the world after the flood. So here we have a very interesting story. Noah, when he was leaving, getting on the boat, Og, this giant that we're speaking of, and later on we'll talk a little bit more detail about his size, his stature, his history. We'll really zoom in on this particular giant, comes over to Noah. So imagine Noah is about to sail off on this journey with the animals, and comes one huge giant to him, and he tells him, "You have to save me too." Noah says, "I can't save you. I have no room in the boat." He says, "I'll make with you a deal. I'll hold on to the boat. The boat had like some sort of a wooden ladder or something to latch onto. So he says, I'll hold on to the boat the whole time as long as you feed me from the inside." So Og says, if you are willing to save me and feed me and make me survive this flood, Og swore to Noah that he'll be Eved Olam leNoach v'Zaro, that he is going to be his long life slave to him and to his family forever and ever should he save him. And wouldn't you know it, Noah acquiesced. And the whole time while you guys are imagining a boat in the middle of the ocean with all the animals, now you have to add another visual. And the other visual is that there's a big giant holding on to the boat. And Noah opening up the window every day and feeding him food, keeping him alive. And that's how the giants made it past the flood, past the Mabul. And that particular giant's name is called Og, which is also known as the Palit. The Palit is like the escapee, the one who escaped. Later on in the Chumash, you'll see that the Palit came to visit Abraham. Who is the Palit? It's Og. Why is he called the Palit? Because he's the one that escaped. All existence got wiped out, and he was able to escape. Well, that explains Og. I get that. But you did mention that there was another giant. His name is Sichon. So what's the story with him? How did he make it after the flood? So this is an even a more interesting story than Og's deal with Noah. Sichon, Melech HaEmori, as we know him later on, but just right here, right now, we'll call him just Sichon, happens to be Og's brother. But his story is different. His story of how he made it past the flood is a very interesting one. Og had a father, and his father's name was Achia. Sichon ve'Og are brothers. They are the sons of Achia. Achia is the son of Shamchazai. Remember, I told you about the two. There's opinion that there are two. The two angels. One was Shamchazai, and the other one was Azai and El. So Azai and El, I told you where he is right now. This is the angel that made the teshuvah and went back to the heavens. However, Og and Sichon are the grandchildren of this original fallen angel. However, his son, their father, Achia, right before the flood, he went and he forced himself on Ham's wife. Remember, Noah had Shem, Ham, and Yafet. Ham, his wife, was taken forcefully by Achia, and he impregnated her. And the entire time while she was on the boat, Sichon was in her belly. Now, as the plot thickens, we know that one of the rules on the boat was that no one was allowed to have relations, because as the Shem is bringing deen, judgment onto the world, as the world is going through a destruction, as the world is going through some sort of a reset, a renewal, but it's going through a very the whole situation of the Mabur. Kadosh Baruch Hu said this is not the right time to have relations. A person should not have relations while the world is going through that. However, 3 people did have relations in the boat, in the ark. One of them was Ham. And the reason why Ham had relations with his wife on the boat is because a month or 2 into being on the boat, Ham's wife begins to show. She starts to grow a belly. And he got so embarrassed because he knows it's not his. So he wanted to have relations with her just to save face. So nobody could say that, where did this baby come from? You're not supposed to have relations. So he went ahead and had relations with her just not to get embarrassed, but he knew very well that it wasn't his. And who was it? It was the child of Achia. And Achia is the father of Og. And Sichon is the stepbrother of Og. So as a matter of fact, 8 people went onto the boat, but 9 came out. Sichon was born on Tevat Noach. Now, as they come out of the boat, And I guess, we don't know much of what happened after they come out of the boat. But the next place that we see Og mentioned, Sichon and Og will get mentioned later on in the Chumash. But just the next time that we see the name mentioned is we see that Og is called the Palit, like I said, the escapee. And we see that Og, all of a sudden, comes to visit Avraham. So Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer opens it up for us a little bit and says, remember Avraham Avinu in Parashat Lech Lecha, next week's parasha, we're going to hear about Avraham Avinu, the first one to discover monotheism and to promote Hashem in the world. And ironically, his parents were had a shop for idols, and the famous story where they left him to watch the store, and when they came back, all the idols were broken except for one idol holding a hammer. And when his father asked him, well, who broke all these idols? So Avraham Avinu pointed to that one. He's the one that smashed all of them. And so his father told him, that's not possible. He's made out of wood. He's made out of stone. He can't do anything. He goes to him, exactly. So why do you worship him? So Terach, Avi Avraham, his own father, reported him to the king, which, by the way, the king believed that he was a god himself. And Terach takes his own child and reports him and brings him in to Nimrod, and he tells him, not only does he not believe in idols, but he doesn't believe in you. So Nimrod tested Avraham Avinu's God. He says, oh yeah, you think your God can save you from my God? And he threw him into an inferno. And he stayed there for 3 days. And it says that when Avraham Avinu came out of Kasdim, when he came out of that inferno, all the Gdolei Hador, all the real important VIPs of that generation stood there and started to give him gifts, because he really proved that he was not only unique, but very special, but definitely that God is with him. Even though they didn't believe in a God, but they saw that he had some sort of special protection, and Avraham Avinu was definitely a holy man. Nimrod, who's the guy who threw him into the inferno, gave him a gift. And what was the gift? V'amad Nimrod v'katav. It says over there, V'amad Nimrod v'natan lo avdo Eliezer l'Avraham. Nimrod, the evil king of that time, the dictator, had a servant, by the name of Eliezer. And he gave this servant the name of Eliezer to Avraham. And the Midrash tells us that the Eliezer, the faithful servant of Avraham, is actually who? Og. Later on, we can see the Arizal reveals to us how we can learn out that Eliezer, the servant of Avraham, who's also known to have gone into heaven directly, is also Og. How is it possible? Is Eliezer, the faithful servant of Avraham Avinu, a regular-looking human being that went straight to heaven? Or is he this huge evil giant that we're learning about? Well, maybe I'll reveal it here. The Arizal says that there's a very rare thing of a split soul. And Og and Eliezer had a split soul, where they were actually both Eliezer and both Og. The difference was that Eliezer was all the goodness of that soul, and Og was all that was evil in that soul. There were actually two different entities. That's the revelation that the Arizal gave us in his book Etz HaChaim. But for our lesson, let's continue with understanding that Nimrod gave as a gift Eliezer, who's Og to Avraham. So here we have Avraham Avinu, who has an assistant who is a giant. Look at this visual. Just imagine. In a minute, we'll see how big Og is. And by the way, he if we remember the story of Eliezer, it's a very short story. Not only was he the faithful servant of Avraham Avinu, we know that also when he went to war, when they said, there's a pasuk that says that Avraham Avinu went to war with 318 soldiers. 318 soldiers, Rashi tells us that it's Eliezer. What's Eliezer? If you take the numerical value of the word Eliezer, the Aleph, the Lamed, the Yud, the Zayin, the Ayin, and the Resh, you're going to get the equivalent of 318. And the Midrash also tells us that Og had the power of 318 men. So you can see everything's starting to become interlaced, interconnected. And after the wars, and after him being a faithful servant, we know that he also served as a matchmaker when he sent him over to Lavan's house to find the Rivka for Yitzhak. And when he came back after his faithful service, Avraham Avinu released him, and he gave him his sachar ba'olam hazeh. And we see that the Kadosh Baruch Hu actually gave him his reward in this world in the form of what? That later on we're going to see that Og is introduced to us as Og Melech HaBashan. He became a king of an area called Bashan in Israel. But we see that once again, let's just get the chronology, that right after the flood, we see that he pops up again with Avraham Avinu, that he was given to him as a present by Nimrod. The Zohar says that Og, Shenidbak be'Avraham, that he clinged on to Avraham. He was part of the caravan that traveled with Avraham. He was one of the people that lived in his house. In other words, they're part of the people that were part of his household, the group of people that traveled with him. But when Avraham Avinu got a Brit Milah, it says Kolan Shebeto. It says that Avraham Avinu circumcised all the people of his house, including Og, who was considered a member of his household. And over here we see She'og Nimol, that Og, this giant, also got a Brit Milah. How interesting. Now, since he is known as Abraham's trusted servant Eliezer, Yalkut Shimoni brings a little bit of a description of this giant. It says Eliezer, that each step would be 40 mil. Mil is like a measurement of a measurement that I believe mil is very close to a kilometer. So imagine that every step he takes is 40 kilometers. It says that Pamachad Ga'arbo, it says that one time Avraham Avinu got upset with Og, and because Og was so scared of Avraham Avinu, out of fear, his teeth fell out. And when that tooth fell out, they said that each tooth was roughly about 2 meters, each tooth. And Avraham Avinu took that tooth and made a bed out of it. And some say he created a chair out of it, that his entire life, if you ever go to Avraham's tent, you would see that he would sit in this chair made out of Og's tooth. And it's very interesting because, again, these visuals are so dramatic. So if you want to think about what was Og's size, and keep in mind, Og is one of the smallest giants in history. He's one of the last ones. The ones that came before him were way, way bigger. As a matter of fact, Rav Yitzchak Cohen, in his class about Og Melech HaBashan, was saying that even the measurements that are given to us right now, that we're thinking that he's so huge and he's this tall and he's this wide, he says it's not even close to what he really was. This is just when we're saying that this is 300 amma, an amma, this is an amma, a forearm is an amma. So when they describe to us that he is that Moshe Rabbeinu was 15 amma, Moshe Rabbeinu was 3 meters tall, and when Moshe Rabbeinu jumped off of a cliff to try to, there was a fight between Moshe Rabbeinu and Og. Later on, we'll go into details of it, and he was only able to injure him on his ankle, and they said that his ankle was only about 30 amma, meaning 30 amot, which is like about half a meter. Later on, the rabbi said, "Who says that it's not 30 amma of Og, not of the human being?" several places we see that they're talking about 30 amma according to Og's amma, not the human amma. So again, as much as we'd like to get an imagery, you can just imagine the size of this particular individual. So Masechet Sofrim brings about his size. Says that when Og went to build, when he finally was released by Avraham as a servant, and he went to go and become a king in the Bashan, he started to build buildings. Ubana Shishim Ayarot. He says he built 60 different provinces. Vakatan Shebahem Haya Govan Shishim Ir. And the smallest province, or the smallest area of living that he was in, the height was Shishim Mir, 60 kilometers in height. As it's stated clearly, Shishim Ir Korchevel Argov. This is when they were when they went to Israel with the spies. They came and reported that they saw buildings of that height. And what would he eat? 1,000 shvarim. He would eat 1,000 cows a day. V'kol min chaya, or any other animal that came his way. V'shtiyato 1,000 midot. He would drink almost like 1,000 barrels. U'ma shayta tipat zriato 36 litrit. This I won't mention. Furthermore, it says that when he created furniture, like a bed to sleep in, or utensils to use, everything had to be made out of metal or steel, because anything that was made from wood, he would just crush and brittle and fall apart in his hands. Furthermore, just a little bit more biography about Og. Why is he called Og? It says that his name is Og al Shem Ogot Matzot, because of the Ogot Matzot, because of the matzah. Shoto et shenishbalot Pesach Hayam, because we know, again, in a couple parashiot from now, Lot, Abraham's cousin, maybe Abraham's nephew, is going to get into trouble. He's going to get into trouble in Sodom. And who's going to come and report to Avraham Avinu that his family is in danger? It's going to be Og. And when did he come from Sodom to report to Avraham that Lot is in danger? It happened to be around Pesach time. And what was Sarah doing? What was Avraham doing? They were getting ready for Pesach. And part of what they were cooking was baking, or is matzot, Ogot Matzot. So because he came during the time of Ogot Matzot, they called him Og. Now, Og, when he came, it says, Vayavo hapalit vayaged laAvraham ha'ivri. It says hapalit, the escapee. Again, the palit is talking about Og. Came to Avraham and he told him about his family member, about Lot being in trouble. However, he had an ulterior motive. He did this lira'ah. He didn't do this out of good intentions. He actually had evil intentions behind it. He says, what did Og say in his heart? He says, Avraham loves Lot. And he made him a promise that if he ever gets into trouble, he's going to come and save him. Now that Lot is captured, he's in captivity, I'm going to come to Avraham and I'm going to tell him, you got to go and now save your family. You got to go save your cousin. He's in the middle of a war. And while he goes there, Avraham will get killed. And then I will take Sarah, his wife, for myself. So his whole intention was to report to Avraham that he needs to come and fight the war against the 4 kings and the 5 kings in order to rescue Lot. But in reality, he just wanted Avraham to die at war so he can take Sarah for himself. So we see that he had bad intentions by coming to Avraham Avinu. However, Og got both a reward and a punishment for this action, for the service to Avraham. It says in Midrash Rabbah, Omar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Chayecha, he says, mark my word. It says all those steps that you took all the way from Sodom, all the way to come to Avraham Avinu in order to let him know about Lot, for every step that you took, I'm going to give you a reward and you're going to have a long life. However, but because you were conspiring to kill the righteous Avraham Avinu, you're going to see thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of his children. And at the end, you are going to fall into the hands of the children of Avraham Avinu. As it is said in the Pasuk, it says, the Pasuk says, don't fear Og, because I'm going to put him in your hand, you're going to be able to defeat him. So he got the reward for coming and reporting, long life. But the punishment was that he's going to die in the hands of the Jews. Later on, we're going to see it's going to be in the hands of Moshe Rabbeinu. By the way, just a side point. Look at the reward that God gave the wicked. Even a wicked giant who wanted to kill Avraham Avinu and marry Sarah, Hashem gave him reward for all the steps he took just to come and report that Lot is in captivity. Imagine how much reward the Kadosh Baruch Hu gives to his children, to the Jews that keep Torah and Mitzvot. Just a little side point. Let's continue with this, with his story. Furthermore, Og, even though that, besides this incident over here of how he came to report to Lot, we know that he was a servant, that we went to war, or the Midrash says that Og is the one that went to fight with him. And Og, who Eliezer, and that Eliezer is Gematria 318, that Og has the power of 318 men. But there was a few other things that Og did that wasn't correct, and he got punished for. It says, when Avraham Avinu did a big mishtet, he did a big seudah, celebrating the birth of his son Yitzhak. And Og recalls that when all the great people of the nations would come, he would make fun of Avraham, and he would say, Avraham preda akara veno molid. He's a barren animal, and he doesn't. Preda akara just that he's barren and he's not able to make children. So Kadosh Baruch Hu says, Og, you're embarrassing on the gift that I gave to Avraham Avinu. In other words, Og was saying, how can this possibly be that Yitzhak was born to Avraham Avinu at 100 years old and to Sarah at 90? Avraham is preda akara v'no molid. He's barren. He can't have children. So Kadosh Baruch Hu says, you want to make fun of the present that I give to Avraham Avinu? You're going to see thousands and thousands of the children of Avraham Avinu that are going to come to you and eventually are going to kill you, and you're going to fall in their hands. Again, from the Pasuk, Vayomer Hashem al tir'a oto. The Likutei Evani says that Og Melech HaBashan Haya Eliezer Eved Avraham. Likutei Evani brings it straightforward. Og Melech HaBashan, he is Eliezer, the servant of Avraham. And he has a zchut, he has a merit. What was the merit that Og has? The one chesed that he has is that he brought Yitzhak Avinu, Rivka, as his shidduch. And right after that, he was freed by Avraham, after Yitzhak's shidduch. And Hashem gave him the reward for that not only will he have a long life, but also he will become Og Melech HaBashan. He will be a king in this world. And many years later, we see Og again, meaning right after Avraham Avinu releases Eliezer, after he brings the shidduch of Yitzhak, the next time that we see Og in the Chumash is all the way after Yetziat Mitzrayim, after the Jews were in Egypt, after Yetziat Mitzrayim, about after the Jews are in the desert for 40 years, on the 40th year, and now you can imagine, the Og has been around for a very, very long time, for a very, very long time. If not over 1,000 years for sure. We see Og pop up again, and this time he's not dealing with Noah. This time he's not dealing with Abraham. This time he's dealing with Moshe. Let's see what happens here. It says, when the Jewish people went in the direction of the Bashan, an area called the Bashan, Vayatsa Og Melech HaBashan likratam, and Og Melech HaBashan came out to greet them. Hu v'chol amo, hu and him and his entire army, his entire nation and his army, Edra'i, to go fight the war against the Jews. Vayomer Hashem Moshe al tira oto. Hashem tells Moshe, don't fear him. Ki biyadecha natati oto v'et kol amo v'et artzo. I'm going to put him and his nation and his whole land in your hand. And he says, and you should do the exact same thing that you did to Sichon Melech HaEmori, to his brother, because prior to this battle with Og, Moshe Rabbeinu already killed his stepbrother Sichon in a place called Heshbon. Later on, we'll see the significance of the words Edra'i, which is the place where Og came to fight Moshe Rabbeinu, and the place called Heshbon, which is the place where Sichon came to find Moshe Rabbeinu. A great, great lesson to learn. We'll learn that at the end of the class. So now, we have over here the battle. Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, Al tira oto, don't fear him. Why should he fear Og? Moshe Rabbeinu has gone through so many wars. He's gone through so many battles. What would be the thing that, not only that, he's Eved Hashem, he has 100% full trust in the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Whatever Kadosh Baruch Hu tells him, that's what's going to be. I mean, he proved it with Paro, he proved it with the splitting of the sea, he proved it all the miracles in the desert. Why would he doubt right now? Why would he question? Why would he fear to fight Og? So here, there's another interesting midrash. It says, Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, Al tira oto, don't fear him. But the word oto, which means don't fear him. The word oto, in Hebrew, we have to understand the distinction of the word oto. There's a word called, there's a word in Hebrew called ot. The word ot can be defined in many different ways. Ot is a letter. Ot is a sign. Jewish people have otot. They have signs. What are the signs? Tefillin is an ot. Shabbat is an ot. Brit Milah is an ot. There's many things that are considered ot, a sign. So here, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe, Al tira oto, don't fear his ot. Which ot? Don't fear the Brit Milah that he did with Avraham Avinu. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was looking and he's saying to himself, what merit does this giant have that he's been around for so long? What merit did this giant have that he's been around for so long? And not only been around for so long, he's a king, and now I'm about to face him. Maybe he has some sort of merit that is protecting him. So he thought that maybe it was the Brit Milah. So Kadosh Baruch Hu tells him, Al tira oto. Don't fear that merit, that Brit Milah that he did with Avraham Avinu. Ki biyadcha netati. He says, I'm giving it to you in your hands. And the reason why? Because Pagam et roshem abrit shelo. We know that a person that protects his brit, nobody can touch him. Nobody can harm him. And he's letting us know that if you're worried about the Brit Milah that he did with Avraham, he already desecrated that Brit Milah a long, long time ago. That is not protecting him anymore. And as it says, anybody who who desecrates the ot, the brit, he's worthy of being extracted from this world. Now, Og, Moshe Rabbeinu also saw something very interesting. We know when Moshe Rabbeinu, before he killed the Egyptian, he had a special gift. He looked left, he looked right, and then he killed him. And then he said, and then the Egyptian was killed. So the details of that was that Moshe Rabbeinu looked into his past to see if he had any merits. Then Moshe Rabbeinu looked to his future to see if he has any proper offspring, that maybe tzaddikim that might come out of him. And since he saw that there was nothing good in the past and nothing good is going to come out of him, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't hit him physically. He hit him with a name of God, a special name of God, a 3-letter name of God. And with that 3-letter name of God, he was able to kill that Egyptian. Well, Moshe Rabbeinu used that exact same skill now with Og. He looked behind, he looked into the past, and he saw that he has the merit of the Brit Milah. Hashem tells him, don't worry about it. He already desecrated his Brit Milah. There's no way that he has any sort of credit to rely on. Moshe Rabbeinu looks into the future and he sees something. He sees a tzaddik. He says, wait. I see that there's a nitzotz. There's a spark over here of a tzaddik called Shimon ben Natanel. Shimon ben Natanel is going to be one of the offsprings of Og Melech HaBashan. And I can't kill him because a tzaddik is going to come from him. So what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell him about that? He says, Al tira oto mipnei sheyesh bo nitzot Shimon ben Natanel. He says, don't fear him because he has the spark of Shimon ben Natanel. Because Shimon ben Natanel is a yereh chet. He fears from sinning. And that spark that you're worrying about, I'm going to take it from him and I'm going to make it that it comes from your offspring. So now that he saw that his past has no protection, he saw that the future, the nitzotz, is also protected and is going to come out through a more proper channel, then he went to work. As a matter of fact, if you take Og Melech HaBashan, Og, the king of the area called Bashan. Now, if you look at the spark of the righteous rabbi that was supposed to come from him, is Shimon ben Natanel. Shimon is Shin. Ben is Bet. Natanel is Nun. It spells out Bashan. So anytime you see this rabbi's name in the Gemara, Shimon ben Natanel, now you know, this is the nitzotz that was supposed to come from Og, and Kadosh Baruch Hu made it came out of Moshe. I mean, imagine you go now to learning Gemara and you just pass by a rabbi's name, but look at the story that comes from behind it. How it is interesting to appreciate it. So finally, Moshe Rabbeinu has his encounter with Og Melech HaBashan. And it's very, very interesting because it's a famous story. And if you're ready for a Hollywood fight scene, here it comes. You have over here a giant. He grabs a mountain, an actual mountain. He rips it off of the ground and he holds it over his hand. As he's holding it over his head, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes it that he brings on it kamtze. Kamtze is nemalim, small ants, that while he's holding it, the mountain over his head, a huge amount of ants come and start to create a circle. And as they're eating away at the ground, the middle falls out. Imagine like a donut shape, and it falls and it locks in Og. He's locked in with this mountain. His teeth become elongated and get locked into that mountain, and he can't move his head and he can't move his body. Furthermore, it says that Moshe was coming to fight him now that he subdued him with this with the mountain that he's stuck now and he can't move with this donut shape of a mountain and the teeth that are now stuck into it. It says that he comes and he jumps and he hits him b'karsule v'katle. Masechet Berachot brings the whole thing if you want to see it in detail, but he hits him on his ankle, he drops, and he's able to kill him. And we see that, all the promises that were made, that he got the reward and the punishment was dished out by Moshe Rabbeinu himself. And this battle that we see, this physical battle between Moshe Rabbeinu and Og Melech HaBashan, even though it's a very interesting and graphic visual for the physical part of it, but in reality, this was an epic battle in the spiritual realm as well. Aharon and Moshe represented two forces of Kedusha in the world. The opposing forces in the world to Moshe and Aharon were the two giants, the two brothers, Og and Sichon. Now, Og and Sichon were in the Tum'ah, Moshe and Aharon were in the Kedusha. And right after Moshe Rabbeinu killed Sichon and killed Og, right after, you'll see that the chapter that follows it, Moshe Rabbeinu gives the rebuke to the Jewish people. Right before entering Eretz Yisrael, he gives them a very harsh rebuke. And the rabbis ask, why did he wait till right before they're going into Israel? Is that the proper time? Shouldn't he have done it maybe a little bit before, a little bit earlier? Maybe he should have done it at a different time. Why specifically right after killing Sichon and Og, he gives a very harsh rebuke right before entering Eretz Yisrael? So this is a great question, and there's a great answer. It says, the pasuk says in Bamidbar on the first chapter, on the fourth pasuk, אחרי הכותו את סיחון מלך האמורי, אשר יושב בחשבון, ואת Og מלך הבשן, אשר יושב בעשתרות באדראי. It says, after Moshe Rabbeinu killed Sichon Melech HaEmori in the area of Cheshbon, and Og Melech HaBashan, who was living in the area of Edrei. And over here, there's a very special distinction on why they're mentioning the place of where it happened. So the answer is like this. The Sfat Emet brings this explanation, and it goes like this. Sichon and Og are actually representatives of two klipot, two negative spiritual peels or barriers in this world. Sichon, his klipa is, remember, Sichon died in Cheshbon. Cheshbon means to make calculations, right? So Sichon's klipa is the klipa that had to do with thinking, bad thoughts, bad intentions, foreign thoughts, anything that has to do with tum'ah, and it would implant a lot of foreign ideas, foreign thoughts, foreign thinking in the minds of Am Yisrael. So as long as Sichon was around, the thinking klipa, the negative thinking klipa, was still part of the world. As far as Og, his klipa represented the ta'ava, the desire for things that are very evil. He had ta'ava for things that were very vile. He had things that were wicked-hearted concept. And as long as he was alive, the evil hearts and the overwhelming desires and strange desires would be embedded in the hearts of Am Yisrael. So as soon as Moshe Rabbeinu got into that fight with Og and Sichon and killed them, he was also able to nullify the klipot of foreign thinking, bad thoughts, and anything that had to do with impure thinking or impure thoughts of Am Yisrael. And also, he nullified the klipa of the strange desires, the wrong desires, the wicked heart that would be said. And that's why at that moment, he was able to give a very powerful rebuke, because those two klipot were no longer part of the world. So they were able to be more accepting of the harsh rebuke. Had he done the rebuke prior to that, Og's klipa and Sichon's klipa, the machshavot, the ta'avot, the the two things that usually are a hindrance to a person's spirituality would have stopped the Jewish people from accepting Moshe's final rebuke the right way. So, by doing this, by Moshe, and by the way, this is the end of the giants that we see in the Chumash. This is the end of the giants that we see in the Torah. We took a nice little journey from Bereshit. We skipped all the way to the end of the book. We started with the Nephilim, the Anakim, the Rephaim. Then we went to Og, Sichon. Later on, we saw them when they were, hundreds and hundreds of years later, what they were able to do for themselves, as well as become these gangsters, these people that, they used to charge countries money, and they would extort money from them for protection. There were, people would come to them, and by the way, this is why Bilam came into the picture, because right after Sichon and Og were gone, which were the gangsters that would protect them from enemies, that's when they dispatched Bilam, the sorcerer, to come and protect them, because now they don't have the giants to protect them. So now that they're gone, and now that their klipot are gone, their spiritual walls that brought into this world are gone, they freed up the world for different giants, Torah giants. The giants that are in every generation, tzaddikim that control their mind and actions follow suit. You have to understand that even though this is a great story and great information about the history of mankind from the beginning of time, but we have to know that those two kelipot that Moshe Rabbeinu nullified by killing those two giants are nowadays, and in the past, in the present, and in the future, allowed us and will allow us to have Torah giants, people that are able to sit down and learn with pure thinking and with pure actions. In conclusion, I just want to say one thing. You can believe or not believe what we learned today. Me, I love this stuff, and I know it's true, and I know it's real. I must have quoted maybe 20 midrashim, Zohar, Torah, Mefarshim. I mean, we went from Rishonim, Achronim. We touched everywhere. Bigger and holier rabbis than us have looked into this matter and wrote on it, and almost all of them are writing the exact same thing. It seems like this is like a masoret, a heritage that's been passed down from generation to generation. And this is why we have this information available to us. Just because we don't see it, just because it's not part of our generation, doesn't mean that it didn't exist or hasn't been here on this planet. Even though I don't know if they've dug up any bones the size of Og. If just 30 meters is his ankle, how big can he be? If that's 1/10 of him, he could be 300 meters, if not more, in height. Where you could say, where are those bones? Show me everything that you're speaking of. Well, I just want to tell you one thing: whether you believe or not believe everything that we learned today, whether we have yet to unearth the bones of Og, of Sichon, or whether we find that bed or chair that was made from his tooth that Avraham Avinu used to sit on, what we have here now is the opportunity to believe the words of our sages. La'amin b'divrei chachamim ve'lekabel sachar. To believe the words of our sages and receive reward. To have emunat chachamim. What's emunat chachamim? That you have full faith in the words of our rabbis. Meaning that you don't believe just 99 or 90% or 70% or 50% or 10% of the rabbis' words, books, writings. You believe 100% of it. Emunat chachamim. I believe in everything that the rabbis are telling us. And why? Because this is a lesson that I learned a few years ago from the rabbi from my shul, Rabbi Sharone, and it really, really made me understand this concept. Same thing could be said about the splitting of the sea on Yetziat Mitzrayim. Everyone was always skeptical. Oh, do me a favor, as if a sea can split, right? As if Paro really chased the Jews and drowned in the bottom of the Reed Sea, right? Well, a few years ago, came out a video of chariots, actual chariots on the bottom of the oceans in Egypt. Ornate chariots with jewels and diamonds, matching exactly the location and the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. You know what my rabbi told me? He said, anyone who believed in Yetziat Mitzrayim up until today got a huge sachar, got a huge reward. You know why? Because he had the emunat chachamim. He believed that it happened. Whether it makes sense or doesn't make sense, whether he sees it or didn't see it. It says the Torah emet, Moshe emet, v'Torah emet. And we got the sachar for it. Now, if you go to Google and see the video, and you go to the Chumash and see Yetziat Mitzrayim, okay, easy peasy. It says in the book Yetziat Mitzrayim, and now I see the video of how it really happened. It's not the same like before. Similarly is this. You have the ability right now to believe the Divrei Chachamim, to believe the Torah about these giants, about Og, about Sichor, about their size, about their stature, about the Nephilim, about the Rephaim, about the Zamzumim, about all these, to believe it. Because in a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 3, or I don't know how long it is if Mashiach doesn't come by tomorrow, and they reveal those bones, you'll get credit that you believed it because the Torah said so. You believe it because the Chachamim said so. Because once they unearth those bones, anybody can believe it because you got to see it to believe it, and you'll see it. We have the opportunity right now to have Emunat Chachamim, to believe in the words of the Chachamim, and to receive the reward, and to enjoy the fact that our story, that our Chumash brings the source of how these things happen, and we know where they came from, what they did while they were here, and now that they're gone. This is a very interesting class. I really enjoy the Did You Know series, because I always talk about weird things that are very interesting, but are always Torah-based, always found in Gemarot, in Midrashim, in Zohar, and it's always good that we can talk about so much Torah, about a subject that you might have never even thought to speak about, like giants. So, Hashem varech otchem v'sameach otchem. I hope you enjoyed this class. We might be doing a couple more in this series of Did You Know, to see if we can get a few more fun classes in before the holiday season, before we have to start talking about real things like Emunah and Mashiach. So, Hashem varech otchem v'sameach otchem shitu li bechem nechela b'segor metanim ad esrog dor acharon. I'm going to leave the Zoom platform on for anybody who has any questions, and then we'll take it from there.
Sharone, I have a question, please.
Sure, hang on. Let me just
Thank you.
turn up another. All right, go ahead. What's the question?
So I wrote it in the chat box earlier. I wanted to know if the fallen angels are actually the Erev Rav. Was there ever a chance for them to do teshuvah? Because always in Judaism, I thought we can always, kind of do teshuvah and kind of do better. So does that not apply for the Erev Rav? Thank you.
So we actually touched on this question in the Erev Rav class, and it's there, but I'll answer it. So we know that the Erev Rav comes from, as we learned today, from these fallen angels, and the Erev Rav comes from a combination of Nega Ra, Nephilim. Let's see, I think I have it here. I'll just read it off again. Nephilim, Giborim, Anakim, Rephaim, Amalekim. So the Nephilim, Giborim, Anakim, Rephaim, those are all giants. They're gone. What's left is the Amalekim. Okay? So let's talk about Amalek a little bit. Amalek, we learned about them, that halakha, meaning halakha, Esav Soneh Israel. Esav Soneh Yaakov. In other words, that they are the root of all evil is Amalek, and they are so embedded in evil that there is no teshuvah for them. That's why there's a halakha that Esav Soneh Amalek. meaning Esav, is there any way that he could do teshuvah and love Yaakov? No. Halacha, Esav will always hate Amalek. And we see that in their actions. Just in as soon as we got out of Yetziat Mitzrayim, they had no fear. They went on a suicide mission. They knew they were going to die. They're going against the Jewish God. They're going against the Jews right after Yetziat Mitzrayim. They said, why? Let's cool the people down. Let's not, we'll die, but let them not have fear the next time they want to go to war with them. And they knew that. And the reason why they did that is because they just wanted to have no kedusha. The Amalek represents everything that is wicked and tum'ah in the world and unholy in the world. That is their essence. So anything that is there, and they're called Rosh Goim. They're called the first one that is in on the top level of the evil Gentiles. And there's actually the only one that is considered evil and that has no option to do teshuvah is them. Everybody else, it doesn't say it about them. Only about Amalek. So we see over here is that because their true essence is evil, we see that their whole essence in this world is to take away purity and holiness and just bring tum'ah and evil to the world. There's no teshuvah for them. Otherwise, it would be as an option. As a matter of fact, one of the 613 mitzvot is limchot et zecher Amalek. Imagine we have one of our mitzvot is to destroy the nation of Amalek. We had one chance to do that in the time of Shaul Amalek, and we missed out on that opportunity. And the next time that that's going to happen is in the end of times. It's going to be very, very clear who Amalek is. You can see how the evil is starting to lurk and come out from hiding in the world. And soon you're going to see the face of Amalek, and you're going to see that these people are not interested in teshuvah, and they don't have a fiber. There's not a fiber of their being that is interested in becoming good. They want to be evil, and they want to be evil towards specific people. And one of the group of people that they want to annihilate happens to be the Jews, and that's what there's no teshuvah for them. And because the Erev Rav comes from that, unfortunately, we have to deal with it until they're finally revealed to us who they are, and then there will be a big war. Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions?
Yes, so then I'm sorry to just jump in again. Thank you. You explained it very well. I just wanted to ask another question. So are any of the Jewish people today from this Erev Rav?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So
yes.
that might explain
our rabbis have told us that there is Erev Rav amongst us. It's very, very visible today. Self-hating Jews, right?
Right.
We have
right.
that. All right. In Israel, it's very evident. You go to Israel, you see that the religious Jews are being chased, are being targeted. Mm-hmm. You also see that there's Jews in Israel that are completely against Judaism. They don't mind living in the land. They don't mind being called Israelis, but they want nothing to do with kosher food, with Brit Milah, with bar mitzvahs, with Torah, with Passover, with Yom Kippur. They don't want to have anything to do with it. So, and what they're doing is they're using a lot of different platforms to normalize that type of thinking in the land of Israel. And that's the Erev Rav. Imagine you're living amongst Jews that are completely against Judaism and God.
Mm-hmm. So there's Erev Rav here in the United States too then, right?
There absolutely is.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions?
There's a question from one of your audience people. They want to know, visiting a doctor with idols in their practice, is that a form of idol worship?
Visiting a doctor
that has idols in their office.
Idols, like what? He's Indian or he's Christian, something like that? Is that what it is? They have like what do you call it? Statues?
I would imagine. I'm reading what Michael Ben-Melech wrote for someone.
Got it.
On the,
So, first of all, we do go to Gentile doctors. I mean, the Gentiles are good people. Some of them are doctors. Sometimes that not you're not going to be able to get all your services just from Jewish people unless you live in an area where you could actually achieve that. But again, Gentiles are great people. They have different faith. They have different belief, and that's by design. There's a reason why there's Jews and Gentiles. If you go to a doctor who happens to be a specialist or happens to be a doctor that you need that's on your health group or program that you need to go to, I don't think it's any issue. I think the way that we walk into doctor offices is we always pray to Hashem to give us the refuash from Him through the tool that He's going to be using today, which is going to be this nurse, that doctor, so on and so forth. But if that doctor, while he's checking your pulse or giving you a prescription, is trying to push Vishna on you or try to take you to Sunday Mass, maybe that's an issue. But as far as what their spiritual orientation is, I don't think it is. But if it bothers you to the point to be sitting over there with those things around you, then try to get a Jewish doctor. I'm sure it's not going to be hard. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll meet up again next Thursday. Until then, Shabbat Shalom and B'chavat Tzlacha.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.